Hi, welcome to a Curve tutorial video. My name is Natan Cohen. I'm the head of customer success here at Curve. And in this video, we're going to learn how to embed the single panel widget. Now, the single panel widget allows you to embed a single chart within a single panel into your core application. And you can do this outside of a Curve dashboard. So this would be especially useful if you wanted to embed a single key chart maybe on your homepage, or if you wanted to embed a Curve chart as part of another dashboard that you might have outside of Curve, for example. So with that, let's get started. So let's begin by going into my data set here, employee sales performance, where I've built a few charts. We're going to go to the Analyze tab, and we're going to embed this total sales quarter over quarter bar chart. So you'll find the embed chart link on any chart that you've built inside of a data set. And if you just click embed chart, all of the code that you need to run the single panel widget, just like any other widget, is presented here. So we have a special AN panel HTML tag. We have a JSON widget config object here, some of which has some very common properties that all widgets have, and then some custom properties that we're going to get more into depth on a little bit later in this video. And just like any widget, we have one or more JavaScript launchers that you have to include in your front end. So I'm going to start by copying the panel config, and I'm going to paste it in my front end over in Visual Studio Code. So here I am in Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to paste the widget configuration properties into my special embed widget function. Okay. Now remember that a widget configuration object and all of its properties and all of its values are always visible to the client in the front-end browser. So I'm going to move three sensitive properties to my back-end service that produces a JWT encrypted token. First, I'm going to move API key, then I'm going to move app ID, and then I'm going to move user ID. Those are my three sensitive properties that should be encrypted and not visible to end users in the browser. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, and I've moved those three sensitive properties to my backend service so that they are encrypted securely with a JWT token. What I have left is the domain and a few other properties that are required for the single panel widget. Let's go over what those properties are and what they do. First is Curve ID, and Curve ID always refers to the dataset ID. So this ID right here would be the source data set for the chart inside the panel that I'm embedding. Then there's a type property, and I'm going to set that to chart because I'm embedding a bar chart. The other type would be metric, since Curve separates the three metric charts as distinct from all other chart types. And then the chart ID. So this is the ID of the actual chart that I'm embedding. And finally, we're going to set the feature permission property, which is actually an object that can contain other properties, to disable a feature that's not supported for the single panel embedded mode. And that was included by default. So now let's flip back to Curve Composer and see what else we have to bring in. So here I am back in Curve Composer, and I have two more snippets of code that I have to copy and paste into my front end. The first is to make sure that I'm creating a HTML tag called AN-panel. And the second is to make sure that I use the correct JavaScript widget launchers. So I'm going to copy those widget launchers. And remember that it's AN-panel. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to make those changes. So here I am back in Visual Studio Code, and first thing I'm going to do is update my script launcher tags to include the two that are required for the single panel widget. Here they are. Typically, you should put those script launcher references right before the closing body tag. And finally, I need a element created, and it's an-panel. Okay, this code dynamically creates the element underneath a special div called widget-container. And it takes an attribute that's not called settings. This attribute is called config. I'm just going to give this a different name here. This will be curve panel config. And with that, I'm ready to test. So here we are in a web browser, and I'm just going to test this by refreshing the page. You'll notice that nothing seems to happen, and if you're doing this along with me, you'll notice that you may get the exact same problem. So I'm going to load the developer tools and load the console view. You'll notice that the server is saying, well, it's a 401 unauthorized. And when you see that, when you're trying to embed a widget, it's almost certainly because you've either not passed an API key to authenticate yourself, or you've not passed a secure JWT token. And that is the case here. We've included all the properties in the widget configuration except for the JWT token. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and add that last required property. So here we are back in Visual Studio Code. And if you remember, I moved app ID, user ID, as well as API key over to my backend service, which produces an encrypted JWT token. And I'm actually fetching that token. But as you can see, I have not referenced that token anywhere in my widget config. And that is why I'm seeing the 401 unauthorized error. So I'm going to add one more required widget config property called QV token. And I'm going to set its value equal to the token that I'm getting back from my fetch token method. With that, let's go and test it again. So here we are back in the web browser, and I'm going to give this page a refresh. Now you'll notice that I don't have any more console errors, and the bar chart has loaded successfully. So here we have a single panel chart embedded in my web application. It's not part of a dashboard, but it is part of a panel, so I can take filter actions, or I can do an export action on the individual chart. So that's an example of embedding a single panel chart into your core application. Thanks so much for watching.